My name is Zara, and this is the story of how my own family tried to erase me. On Thanksgiving, the people who were supposed to love me sat across the table and called me a burden. They told me I wasn't welcome. By the next day, I was out of the house, cut off, discarded, as if I had never mattered. But the betrayal didn't stop there. They drained my bank accounts. They forged my name. They tried to steal my sister from me. And when I fought back, they did everything they could to destroy me, spying on me, threatening me, even breaking into my home. It wasn't just cruelty, it was control. And the worst part? They almost won. I was drowning in their lies, buried under years of manipulation and deceit. But then, I found the one piece of evidence that could take them down for good. The scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled the air, but the warmth of the holiday was nothing more than an illusion. The dining table was set meticulously, fine china, polished silverware, and a perfectly roasted bird sitting in the center. It was the kind of picturesque Thanksgiving scene most families cherished, but beneath the surface, tension simmered like an untended pot on the stove. I sat across from my parents, Darius and Marlo, watching as my younger sister, Selene, twirled her fork absent-mindedly through her mashed potatoes. She was 16, still caught in that delicate space between childhood and adulthood. She looked uneasy, as if she sensed the impending storm before it hit. Darius had been drinking, the red flush creeping up his neck, the way he gripped his glass a little too tightly. It was all too familiar. I knew that look. I had seen it for years. I tried to ignore it, keeping my focus on Selene. "How's school?" I asked, offering her an easy way into conversation, a distraction from whatever mood our father was in tonight. She glanced up, hesitant. "It's fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marlo, my mother, poked at her stuffing but barely touched it. She had the tired, resigned look of a woman who had long stopped fighting battles she knew she would never win. Then it happened. Darius set his fork down with an intentional clatter, the sound slicing through the room like a blade. He leaned back in his chair, fixing his bloodshot gaze on me. "You are a burden, and you can't stay with us anymore." At first, I thought I had misheard him. The words were so absurd, so casually cruel, that my brain refused to register them as reality. The room went still. Even the soft clinking of silverware against porcelain halted. Marlo let out an awkward laugh, but she didn't contradict him. She didn't defend me. She didn't even meet my eyes. Selene, her fork frozen mid-air, stared at me with wide, horrified eyes. I swallowed the piece of turkey I had been chewing, my throat suddenly dry. "What?" Darius exhaled, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "You heard me. You've overstayed your welcome. It's time for you to go." I sat there, trying to process his words. I was 34. I had a job. I paid my own bills. No, not just mine. Theirs. I had been paying for the electricity, the internet, and even groceries most weeks. Darius hadn't worked in years, and Marlo's part-time job barely covered anything. Without me, there was no house, no functioning utilities. I turned to my mother, desperate for some sign that this was a mistake, some misunderstanding. But she kept her eyes down, shifting uncomfortably in her seat. "Dad," Selene started, but he cut her off with a glare. "This is my house," he declared, voice sharp. "My rules. And I say she's done here." A hot, burning sensation spread through my chest. Anger, humiliation, the sheer audacity of it all. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to not let them see how deeply they had cut me. "You need me more than I need you," I said finally, my voice eerily calm. Darius scoffed. "You think so?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Who do you think has been keeping this place running? You? Mom?" I shook my head. "I've been paying the bills while you sit around, pretending things will magically fix themselves." Marlo flinched at my words, but Darius didn't even blink. "Doesn't matter," he said. "I'm done. You're leaving." I could feel Selene looking at me, her fear practically radiating across the table. If they could do this to me, what did that mean for her? I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. My movements were slow, deliberate. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to argue. I stood, straightened my dress, and calmly set my napkin on the table. Then I walked to the sink, rinsed my hands under the cold water, and dried them with meticulous care. When I turned back, Darius had a smug expression, as if he believed he had won something. Marlowe refused to meet my eyes. Selene looked like she might cry. I gave her a small nod, one that said, "I'm okay, I promise." But I wasn't. Without another word, I turned and walked down the hall to my room, shutting the door behind me. I stood there for a moment, staring at the walls I had lived between for years, at the small space I had carved out for myself, in a house that had never truly felt like home. Then, I reached for my suitcase. As I started packing, I could hear their voices through the thin walls. Marlowe's hushed, worried tone. "We need her money, Darius." His response, flat and unbothered. "We'll figure it out. She's not our problem anymore." A knock on my door. I turned, heart clenching. Selene stood there, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "What the hell just happened?" she whispered. I exhaled, shaking my head. "I don't know," I whispered back, "but I'm leaving tomorrow." The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, packed my last bag, and stepped into a world that suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. The air outside was sharp, cutting through the thin hoodie I'd thrown on over my sweater. The streets were still dark, a dull winter hush settling over the quiet Chicago neighborhood. I stood there for a moment, watching my breath form small clouds in the frigid air, and then turned back toward the house that had never truly been a home. My fingers curled tighter around the handle of my suitcase. I should have felt something, anger, grief, resentment, but all I felt was relief. I glanced at my phone. No missed calls, no messages from my parents. Just one text from Selene, sent sometime around 2 in the morning. I can't believe they're doing this. Neither could I. I exhaled slowly and stepped back inside, just for a moment. The house was eerily silent, bathed in the dim gray of early morning. No footsteps, no voices, no signs of life. It was as if the whole place had already erased me. I moved through the living room, my footsteps careful, deliberate. The walls still held the same faded family photos, as if nothing had changed, as if I hadn't just been cut off from my own family the night before. In the kitchen, last night's dinner plates sat stacked in the sink, untouched. It was strange. Just hours ago, I had sat at this very table, surrounded by people who had called me family, only to have them discard me like an unwanted guest overstaying their welcome. My father's words echoed in my head. "She's not our problem anymore." I let out a humorless laugh under my breath. Before I left, I had one last thing to do. I sat down on the couch, pulled up my phone, and opened my banking app. Then, one by one, I removed my name from every single bill I had been paying for them. Electricity, water, internet, even Netflix. Every service that had been running under my name, gone. It took less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes to undo years of financial support. I imagined the moment my father would realize it. The confusion, the frustration, the helpless rage when the lights flickered out, when the Wi-Fi stopped working, when their world began to crumble without me quietly holding it together in the background. A smirk tugged at my lips as I stood. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. I made my way toward the hallway, pausing in front of Celine's bedroom door. I wanted to knock, to tell her I was sorry I couldn't take her with me. But what could I say? She was still stuck here. And if she wasn't careful, they'd turn on her next. Instead, I pressed my hand lightly against the wood for just a second, a silent goodbye, before pulling it away. I stepped outside without looking back. The house that had once felt like a cage was behind me now, growing smaller as I walked toward my car, my breath forming clouds in the cold air. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel lost. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Orion's apartment was across the city, nestled in a quiet, slightly run-down neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but safe. A stark contrast to where I had just come from. By the time I pulled up, the sun had started to rise, casting long shadows against the old brick buildings. Orion didn't ask questions when he opened the door. He just handed me a steaming cup of coffee, as if he had known this day would come. "I don't get how they could do this to you," he said as I stepped inside, setting my bags down. His voice was calm, but I could see the frustration simmering beneath the surface. I sank onto his couch, cradling the coffee between my hands. "I should have left sooner," I admitted. I shook my head. "It doesn't matter now." "They didn't care about you," he said, watching me carefully. "They cared about your paycheck." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, and now they don't have that either." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app again, checking my savings. Not much, but enough to start over. And then I saw it. A string of notifications. Multiple failed login attempts. My stomach twisted. "Darius!" I clenched my fists as I stared at the alerts, my pulse hammering against my ribs. He was trying to access my account. Of course he was. He had never needed me, just my money. And now that it was gone, he was desperate. I immediately called the bank. Within minutes, my account was locked down, passwords changed, security tightened. Fraud alert confirmed. I hung up, exhaling sharply, my fingers still tight around my phone. Orion was watching me. "They're not just letting you go, are they?" I forced a breath into my lungs. "No," I admitted, "but I'm not scared of them anymore." Then, without hesitation, I blocked their numbers, one by one. But deep down, something told me this wasn't over. I thought I had left them behind, but I underestimated how far my father would go to keep his lies intact. For the first time in years, I was finally starting to breathe again. It had been a few days since I walked out of that house for good, and the weight on my chest was beginning to lift. Orion's apartment was small but warm, a quiet refuge from the chaos I had known for so long. That morning, I sat at his kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me, scrolling mindlessly through job listings. I had enough savings to survive for a little while, but not forever. It was time to start rebuilding my life. Then a message popped up on my phone. "I heard you moved out. I hope you're okay." I frowned at the sender. A mutual acquaintance, someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Before I could even respond, another message followed. "I'm sorry about what happened with your dad. He said you stormed out on Thanksgiving, yelling at everyone." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. A cold, sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I hadn't told many people about what happened. I had barely had time to process it myself. But somehow, everyone already had a version of the story, and it wasn't the truth. More messages came in. "I can't believe you left your parents like that. Your mom is heartbroken. You should have more respect for your father." I tightened my grip on the phone, my jaw clenching so hard it hurt. This wasn't just gossip. This was Darius. He was controlling the narrative, twisting the truth into something that suited him. He was making me out to be the villain, the selfish daughter who abandoned her family without a second thought. I needed to hear it for myself. I hit dial and pressed the phone to my ear. Solène picked up almost immediately. "Zara?" she asked, her voice cautious. "What the hell is Dad telling people?" I demanded. A pause, then a sigh. "He's saying you had a meltdown," she admitted quietly. "That you got mad at them for no reason and just left." I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers ached. "And Mom?" "She's backing him up." Solène hesitated. "She's not exactly correcting him." Of course she wasn't. I closed my eyes, breathing in through my nose. I had seen my father manipulate people for years, twisting reality to fit his version of events. I had watched him break my mother down until she became nothing more than an echo of his words. But this was different. This was him trying to erase what actually happened. When I finally spoke, my voice was low, controlled. He wants me to disappear, I said. Not just from the house, from the story. Orion, who had been listening quietly from across the room, folded his arms and leaned against the counter. Your dad's all about control, he said simply. If he can't control you anymore, he'll control how people see you instead. I exhaled sharply. He was right. And I couldn't let it happen. I opened my phone and stared at my screen for a long moment, my pulse hammering in my ears. I knew what I had to do. I opened my social media account, and I started typing. Let me be clear. I didn't leave my family. They threw me out, and the only reason they're upset is because I was the one keeping the lights on. My thumb hovered over the post button. I knew what would come next. The backlash, the accusations, the messages from relatives telling me to respect my parents and keep family matters private. But I also knew this was the only way to stop my father's lie from becoming the truth. I pressed send. Almost instantly, the notifications started rolling in. Some people supported me, offering words of encouragement. Others attacked me, defending my father's version of the story. I let them, because for the first time, my truth was out there. I refused to let my father erase me from my own story. At first, I thought posting the truth would be enough. But then I started noticing something strange. Someone was watching me. It had been a few days since I exposed my father's lies online. The initial wave of backlash had come and gone, leaving behind a dull, lingering exhaustion. I thought that would be the worst of it. The messages, the judgment, the distant relatives calling me ungrateful without knowing a single damn thing about what had really happened. But something felt off. It was subtle at first, a creeping unease that I tried to ignore. One evening, as I walked back to Orion's apartment, I noticed a car parked across the street. Nothing special, just a dark sedan. But when I came out again later that night, it was still there. The next morning, I stepped outside to take the trash to the curb and found my bin knocked over. Just mine. The other bins lining the street stood perfectly upright. I brushed it off. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe I was just on edge. But then it kept happening. A shadow where there shouldn't be one. A flicker of movement just beyond my vision. The feeling of being watched, even when I was alone. I told myself it was paranoia. Until Orion noticed too. You've been acting weird, he said one night, leaning against the counter while I stared absently at the window. What's going on? I hesitated. If I said it out loud, it would make it real. But something about the way Orion looked at me, calm, steady, waiting, made me realize I wasn't imagining this. I think someone's watching me, I admitted. His brows furrowed. What do you mean? I told him about the car, the trash bin, the feeling I couldn't shake. Orion didn't brush it off. He nodded slowly, his expression turning serious. If it happens again, tell me right away. That night, I woke up at 3 a.m. with my pulse hammering in my throat. I didn't know why. No sound had woken me. No nightmare had shaken me from sleep. But something felt wrong. I sat up, rubbing my arms against the cold, and my gaze drifted to the window. And then I saw him. A figure stood across the street, just beyond the glow of a street lamp. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They just watched. My breath caught in my throat. My fingers fumbled for my phone as I scrambled out of bed, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I hit Orion's number. Zara? His voice was groggy but instantly alert. Look outside, I whispered. Seconds later, I heard his footsteps, the soft rustle of curtains. A pause. Then, Z, there's no one there. I pressed my forehead against the window, my stomach twisting. The figure was gone. I wasn't losing my mind. Someone had been there. And now they weren't. The next morning, my phone buzzed as I was making coffee. Selene. I answered immediately. Hey. Her voice was barely a whisper. I think Dad knows where you are. I froze. What? He was on the computer last night, she said, her words tumbling out fast and anxious. I saw your old address, the one with Orion. He had it written down in some notes. Mom tried to stop him, but he said— She hesitated. Said what, Selene? She swallowed hard. He said, She doesn't get to just walk away. A shiver ran down my spine. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. This was a warning. I lowered the phone slowly, my fingers gripping it so tightly they ached. Orion walked into the room, took one look at my face, and his expression darkened. What happened? I showed him my phone. The missed calls. The unknown number that had tried to log into my email. He exhaled sharply. Zara, this isn't just harassment. This is stalking. The words settled between us like a loaded gun. We need to go to the police, he said. I hesitated. A part of me wanted to handle this on my own, to not escalate things. But the truth was, they were already escalating, whether I wanted them to or not. I didn't know how far he'd go, but I didn't want to wait until I found out. The next morning, I got an email alert. Someone had just opened a bank account in my name. At first, I thought I had read it wrong. My mind was still sluggish from sleep, my fingers slow, as I tapped on the subject line. New bank account confirmation. Thank you for your application. My stomach dropped. I never applied for a new account. My thumb hovered over the screen before I forced myself to scroll. The email contained my full name, my date of birth, even the last 4 digits of my social security number. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just a phishing scam, this was real. I bolted upright, my heart slamming against my ribs, as I switched to my banking app, checking my accounts. Nothing missing, no withdrawals. But that didn't mean I was safe. I opened my credit monitoring app and stared at the screen. Multiple inquiries. Someone was trying to open lines of credit under my name. I gritted my teeth. Darius. This had his fingerprints all over it. He wasn't just trying to intimidate me anymore. He was trying to financially ruin me. I snatched my phone off the nightstand and dialed the bank's fraud department. The line rang twice before a chipper voice answered. Thank you for calling First Federal Banking Services. How can I assist you today? I clenched my jaw, forcing my voice to stay even. I just received an email confirming a bank account was opened in my name. I never applied for it. This is fraud. The rep hesitated. Let me pull up the application. Can I have the last 4 digits of your social security number? I rattled it off, my fingers digging into my thigh as I waited. A few seconds of typing, then, I see the account was opened just this morning. It looks like— a pause. Ma'am, the application came from an IP address associated with your old home address. I went still. I knew what that meant. Darius wasn't even trying to hide it. The rage that boiled inside me was white hot, but I swallowed it down. I had to stay calm. I need this shut down immediately, I said. Of course, the rep assured me. I'll escalate this to our fraud team and freeze the account, but I highly recommend you freeze your credit and file a police report as well. I exhaled slowly, nodding even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, I'll take care of it. But as I ended the call, my hands were still shaking. He wasn't just messing with me anymore. He was trying to destroy me. Orion found me pacing the living room when he came out of his bedroom, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Zara, he asked, voice groggy. What's wrong? I spun toward him, my phone still clutched in my hand. My father just tried to open a bank account under my name, I said, my voice tight. I caught it before any money moved, but he's already hitting my credit. Orion's sleepy expression vanished. His posture stiffened, eyes narrowing. Are you serious? He's using my old information, Orion. I gestured sharply toward my phone. He's committing a felony! Orion exhaled through his nose, the way he always did when he was barely holding back anger. That's it. We're going to the police. Today. I hesitated. Reporting my own father? Taking legal action against him? It felt heavy. Wrong somehow, even though I knew he was the one doing something wrong. But if I didn't do this, he wouldn't stop. I lifted my chin. Okay. An hour later, I sat across from a police officer at a dull gray desk in the precinct. The officer, Detective Simmons, according to his nameplate, watched me over his notepad, pen poised. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. I forced my hands to stay steady as I handed over my phone. "My father stole my identity and attempted financial fraud," I said, keeping my voice firm. "He opened a fake account in my name and attempted to apply for credit lines using my information." Simmons nodded, flipping through the screenshots I had taken of the emails, the bank's confirmation, the failed credit applications. "This is serious," he said. "We'll open an investigation." I exhaled, tension loosening in my shoulders. But as Orion and I walked out of the station, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Darius wasn't in jail. He still had access to my information, and I knew one thing for sure. If he thought I was going to let him get away with this, he was about to be very disappointed. The moment I got back to Orion's apartment, I got another shock. My mother had just sold my laptop. I barely had time to take off my coat before my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting another fraud alert, another message from some distant relative regurgitating my father's lies. But it wasn't that. It was from Selene. "Selene, Mom sold your laptop." For a second, my brain refused to process the words. I read the message again, and again. And then, the rage hit me like a freight train. I dropped onto the couch, my fingers flying across the keyboard. "Me. Are you serious?" "Selene. She took it to a pawn shop this morning. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen." "Me. That was my laptop. It had everything on it." "Selene. I know." I clenched my jaw so tightly my teeth ached. That laptop wasn't just a piece of technology. It was my entire work portfolio, my financial stability, my future. It had years of projects, client files, everything I needed to rebuild my life. And my mother had just sold it. I hit dial and pressed the phone to my ear. Marlo picked up on the second ring. "Zara," she sighed, as if she had been expecting this call. I didn't even try to keep my voice calm. "Did you seriously sell my laptop?" "You left it behind," she said, voice flat. "It was in our house. That makes it ours." I gripped the phone so hard I thought I might crush it. "That's not how ownership works, Marlo." She exhaled through her nose. "We needed the money." My stomach twisted. "You needed the money?" I repeated. "Then why not sell something of yours?" No response. I forced myself to breathe evenly. "That laptop had my entire career on it," I said, my voice low, controlled. "Everything I need to make a living. And you—" My throat tightened. "You stole it." She didn't even sound guilty. "You left, Zara. Actions have consequences." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't about survival. This was punishment. I hung up before I could scream. Orion, who had been silently watching me from across the room, arched a brow. "Let me guess," he said. "Your mother suddenly thinks she has squatter's rights to your stuff?" I threw my phone onto the couch. "She pawned it. She actually—" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "She sold my laptop just to get back at me." Orion frowned, crossing his arms. "Which shop?" I blinked. "What?" He grabbed his keys from the counter. "We're getting it back." I took a shaky breath. "I can track it." He gave me a look. "Then start tracking." I sat down, opening my laptop and logging into my account. My fingers moved automatically, pulling up the tracking system. I had set it up years ago, a precaution I never thought I'd actually need. A few seconds later, the location popped up. A pawn shop in downtown Chicago. My hands curled into fists. "Got it," I muttered. Orion nodded. "Let's go." The pawn shop was exactly what I expected. Dim lighting, crowded glass cases filled with electronics, jewelry, and cheap guitars. I walked in first, Orion right behind me. The man behind the counter barely looked up from his phone. "Help you?" he asked, not bothering to sound interested. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "Someone sold you a laptop this morning, a MacBook Pro, space gray, serial number registered to my name." The guy scratched his beard. "We don't do refunds." I exhaled sharply. "I'm not asking for a refund. That laptop was stolen." That got his attention. He set his phone down. "Lady, I don't know what to tell you." I pulled out my phone and held up the tracking screen. "See this? That's my laptop in your store. Either you give it back, or I call the cops and report you for trafficking stolen goods." Orion folded his arms, towering behind me. "Your choice, man." The owner's eyes darted between us. He hesitated for a moment too long, and I could see the calculation happening in his head. Then, with a reluctant sigh, he turned and walked toward the back. A minute later, he returned with my laptop. I snatched it the second it hit the counter, checking it over. My fingers trembled slightly as I powered it on, waiting for the familiar screen to appear. Everything was still there. I exhaled, pressing the laptop to my chest like it was a lifeline. "Thanks for your cooperation," Orion said dryly. We walked out without another word. Back at Orion's apartment, I set the laptop on the coffee table, staring at it. I should have been relieved, and I was. But underneath that relief was something sharper, colder. This wasn't about money, it was about control. And I was done letting them take from me. But the moment I thought I had won, I found out my father was walking free. I was in the kitchen, waiting for the coffee to finish brewing, still trying to shake off the exhaustion from the last few days. My stolen laptop was back, my accounts were secure. For the first time in weeks, I had let myself believe that things were settling down. Then my phone rang. I saw Selen's name and felt a brief flicker of relief. She was the only part of my family I still cared about, but the second I answered, I knew something was wrong. Her breathing was shaky, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad's out." The mug in my hand nearly slipped from my grasp. I tightened my grip, my fingers digging into the ceramic. "What?" "Someone posted his bail last night," she rushed on. "I don't know who. I just heard Mom talking to him on the phone." A chill ran down my spine. Darius wasn't supposed to be out. Not yet. He had been arrested for identity theft, fraud, and harassment, charges that should have kept him locked up. "Selen, are you safe?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "I don't know," she admitted. "Mom won't tell me anything. She just kept saying it's handled, like that means anything." I could feel my pulse thudding in my ears. Who the hell would bail him out? I barely remembered hanging up before turning to Orion. My stomach twisted in knots. "He's out," I said, voice hollow. "Someone paid his bail." Orion's expression darkened instantly. "That doesn't make sense. Who the hell would waste money on him?" I had the same question. Marlo was the obvious answer. She had never had a spine when it came to my father. But this wasn't like her. She had been scared. I could hear it in her voice that night when she tried to reason with him before kicking me out. She wouldn't risk everything for him, which meant someone else had. I pulled out my laptop and started searching. Court records, recent bail payments, anything I could find. Orion leaned over my shoulder. "Check the third-party bondsman," he suggested. I clicked through a few links, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed. And then I found it. A name I didn't recognize. The person who posted Darius's bail wasn't Marlo. It was a stranger. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening. "Who the hell is Jonathan Calloway?" Orion frowned. "Never heard of him. But if he's got money to bail out your father, he's either really generous or he's got skin in the game." A sinking feeling settled in my gut. What if this isn't just about my dad? I murmured. What if someone else has a reason to keep him out? Neither of us had an answer, but deep down, I knew. This was bigger than Darius now. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind wouldn't stop racing. Who was Jonathan Calloway? What did he have to gain from keeping Darius out of jail? And more importantly, what did that mean for me? I tossed and turned, sleep just out of reach, until my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it, squinting at the screen. Unknown number. "You think you won? Watch your back." My hands clenched around the phone. A slow, cold dread trickled down my spine. This wasn't Darius's style. He was blunt, aggressive. If he wanted to scare me, he would have done it directly. This was someone else. I turned the screen toward Orion, who was still awake, scrolling through his own phone. His face darkened the second he read the message. "This isn't just your father anymore," he muttered. I swallowed hard. "No," I admitted. "It's not." By morning, I knew what I had to do. I changed the locks at Orion's apartment, filed a restraining order, locked down my accounts even further. I was preparing for the worst, because whoever had freed my father wasn't done, and I knew he was coming for me. The only question was when. And then, just as I feared, he came after the one person I couldn't protect, Selene. It had been 3 days since Darius was bailed out, and I had been living in a state of constant tension. Every shadow outside Orion's apartment, every unknown number that popped up on my phone, made my pulse quicken. I had been expecting a direct confrontation, a knock on the door, a threat, maybe even worse. But when the attack finally came, it wasn't aimed at me. It came in the form of a thick envelope shoved into Orion's mailbox. I almost didn't open it at first, thinking it was another bill or some junk mail. But then I saw the return address, Cook County Family Court. My stomach twisted as I ripped it open, my hands shaking. My eyes skimmed over the words, but my brain refused to process them at first. Petition for legal guardianship. I felt the blood drain from my face. Darius and Marlo weren't just trying to control me anymore. They were trying to take Selene. I barely registered Orion's voice behind me. "Zara! What is it?" I turned, gripping the papers so tightly the edges crumpled. "They're suing for custody of Selene." Orion's brows furrowed as he took the papers from my hands, scanning them quickly. "What the hell? On what grounds?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "They're claiming I'm unstable and financially irresponsible, that I abandoned my family, that Selene is better off with them." Orion let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "So now that they don't have your money, they're using your sister as leverage." I could barely breathe. This wasn't about Selene's well-being. This was about control. This was revenge. The court date was set for a week from now. Far too soon for me to prepare. I sat at Orion's kitchen table, reading the lawsuit over and over again, looking for something, anything, that would give me an edge. Every word on the page was a lie. That I had left Selene behind without concern. That I had refused to help my family in times of financial struggle. That I was reckless, irresponsible, unfit to have any influence over my sister's life. I gritted my teeth, my hands balling into fists. They're painting me like some selfish, immature kid who threw a tantrum and ran away. Orion exhaled sharply. Because that's the only way they win. They can't attack you with the truth, so they're rewriting the narrative again. I closed my eyes, my pulse pounding in my ears. And if they win? Orion hesitated, then sighed. Then Selene is legally under their control. Until she's 18, they can dictate where she lives, what she does, and who she can talk to. A sick feeling coiled in my stomach. If they won, they could cut her off from me completely. I grabbed my phone and dialed Selene's number. She answered on the first ring. "Zara?" Her voice was quiet, small, like she had been waiting for this call but dreading it at the same time. I took a deep breath. "Did you know about this?" A pause. Then, barely above a whisper, "Yes." My heart clenched. "Selene, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know what to do," she admitted. "Dad keeps saying if I testify against you, he'll stop being so strict with me." My grip tightened on the phone. "And you believe him?" "No," she whispered. "But what if he wins?" I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers against my forehead. "He won't," I said. "I won't let him." Silence. Then, finally, "I don't want to be stuck here, Zara." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I know, baby, I know." That night, I sat in Orion's living room, scrolling through lawyers online, my hands still shaking. I had never fought a legal battle before, but I was about to. I hired an attorney first thing the next morning. I gathered every scrap of evidence I had, bank records proving I paid for household bills, texts from Selene detailing my parents' neglect, every piece of documentation that proved they were the unfit ones, not me. But I knew this wouldn't be a fair fight. Darius played dirty, and he wasn't just trying to take my sister. He was trying to destroy me. I exhaled slowly, my hands curling into fists. If my father wanted a war, I murmured, he was about to get one. But I underestimated just how far he would go to win. I sat in the stiff leather chair of Rachel Sinclair's office, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles ached. The weight of the lawsuit, the impending court battle, and now this. It was all pressing down on me like an avalanche. Rachel, my attorney, leaned forward, her sharp eyes scanning the stack of documents in front of her. She was a woman in her 40s, polished and professional, the kind of person who had seen every dirty trick in the book. But even she looked troubled. "Your father isn't just arguing for guardianship," she said. "He's accusing you of fraud." I blinked. "Fraud?" Rachel nodded, sliding the papers toward me. "Take a look." I hesitated before picking them up, flipping through the stack. The first document stopped me cold. A lease agreement, supposedly signed by me. Except I had never lived at this address in my life. The paper detailed months of unpaid rent, making it look like I had left behind massive debts. The next document was worse. A credit card statement, from an account I had never opened, followed by a bank transfer record, showing that I had supposedly borrowed money from Darius. Thousands of dollars. Money he was now claiming I had refused to repay. I felt physically ill. "This is all fake," I said, my voice shaking. "I never signed that lease. I never opened that card. And I sure as hell never borrowed money from him." Rachel exhaled through her nose. "I believe you. Then why do you look like I'm already losing?" She tapped the papers with a manicured finger. "Because in court, perception is everything. If these documents hold up, the judge might see you as reckless and financially unstable. That makes your father's argument stronger." I clenched my fists. "None of this is real." "It doesn't have to be," she said grimly. "It just has to be convincing enough." I swallowed hard. Darius wasn't just trying to take Selene. He was trying to destroy my entire life. Orion paced the length of my apartment while I sat frozen on the couch, my mind spinning. "He forged documents?" he asked, his voice edged with fury. I nodded, rubbing my temples. "A fake lease, fake debt, fake loans." Orion let out a harsh laugh. "This guy doesn't quit." "He doesn't need me gone," I murmured. "He needs me ruined." Orion crossed his arms. "How much time do we have before court?" "Less than a week," I said, my stomach twisting. "Then we find a way to prove he's lying." I called Selene that night. She picked up on the first ring. "Zara? Did you see Dad working on any documents recently?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. Silence. Then, finally, a hesitant, I think Mom helped him." I squeezed my eyes shut, a fresh wave of nausea washing over me. I should have known. Marlo had never stopped him, not once. But now, she wasn't just watching him do it. She was helping. I didn't sleep that night. Orion and I spent hours poring over the documents, looking for any flaw, any inconsistency. "If he faked this, we just need to prove it," Orion said. I nodded, determination hardening in my chest. We came up with a plan. Contact my old landlord. If the lease was fake, they'd confirm I never lived there. Pull my official bank statements. The so-called loan from Darius? It didn't exist. Request credit bureau records. If the credit card was opened fraudulently, we'd find out. Hire a forensic document analyst. A specialist could prove my signature was forged. This wasn't just about winning anymore. This was about exposing him. I clenched my fists. He thought he could bury me in lies. But I was about to dig him out of them. Then the threats started coming in. I was sitting at Orion's kitchen table, laptop open, sifting through financial statements and legal paperwork, searching for anything that would dismantle my father's fabricated evidence. The glow from the screen was the only light in the room, casting sharp shadows along the walls. I was exhausted, running on nothing but caffeine and sheer rage, but I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. My pulse quickened as I hesitated. Another buzz. A text. Drop the case or you'll regret it. I sat up straighter, my grip tightening around the phone. The air in the apartment suddenly felt colder. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. Someone wanted to scare me into silence. I swallowed hard, reading the message again, trying to steady my breathing. Could this be my father? No, this wasn't his style. He was a brute, not subtle enough for anonymous threats. Whoever sent this was calculated, someone working in the background. I pushed back from the table and walked into the living room, where Orion was stretched out on the couch, flipping through his phone. "Look at this," I said, holding my screen out to him. He read the message, his expression darkening. "Jesus!" He sat up. "Did you recognize the number?" I shook my head. "It's unlisted." Orion exhaled sharply, rubbing his jaw. "This isn't just harassment anymore." "No," I agreed. "It's a warning." We went to the police station the next morning, and the entire experience was infuriating. The officer behind the desk, a tired-looking man in his 40s, barely glanced at my phone before sighing. "This could be a prank," he said. "Unless there's direct physical harm or evidence of an imminent threat, there's not much we can do." I gritted my teeth. "So, I have to wait until someone actually hurts me before you'll step in?" His mouth pressed into a thin line. "I can file a report, but I'll be honest with you. Without proof of who sent it, this won't go anywhere." I wanted to scream. Instead, I snatched my phone back, thanked him through clenched teeth, and stormed out of the station. Outside, Orion muttered, "Unbelievable." "Yeah," I said bitterly. "They won't do anything until it's too late." That was the moment I realized I had to protect myself. Orion helped me set up new security measures. Extra locks, a camera at the front door, motion sensors. It was more than I had ever needed before. But something in my gut told me this was only the beginning. The next morning, Selene called me in a panic. Her voice was high and shaky. "Zara, he knows." I froze. "Knows what?" "Dad found out you're fighting the fraud claims," she said quickly. "And he's furious." I clenched my jaw. "Of course he is. He didn't expect me to push back." Selene was breathing fast. He said if you don't drop it, he'll make sure I never see you again." Ice spread through my veins. "What does that mean?" She hesitated. "He's talking about sending me away, a school across the country, somewhere you can't find me." I gripped the edge of the table. That bastard. This wasn't just a fight over custody anymore. Darius was using Selene as leverage. I exhaled, forcing myself to sound calm. "Listen to me, Selene. He doesn't get to decide that. You have a say in where you go." She let out a small, humorless laugh. "You really think he cares about that?" Number I didn't. But there had to be a way to stop him. That afternoon, I met with Rachel, my lawyer. "What happens if they try to move Selene before the hearing?" I asked, my voice tight. Rachel frowned. "Legally, they're still her guardians. If they choose to relocate her, it's within their rights." "So I can't stop them?" She hesitated. "We can file an emergency injunction, but we need proof of intent, emails, messages, anything that confirms they're planning to send her away before the case is settled." I nodded, already forming a plan in my mind. I wouldn't let this happen. I wouldn't let them take her from me. That night, I opened my social media account. I had tried to keep this fight private, keep the chaos contained to legal papers and courtrooms. But now, I was done being quiet. I started typing. "No matter what threats they throw at me, I will not be silent, and I will not let them take Selene away from me." I hit post. Almost immediately, comments started pouring in. Support, concern, people offering advice, legal contacts, words of encouragement, and then, another notification, a private message. Unknown number. "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" I exhaled slowly, my fingers curling around my phone. I wasn't scared anymore. If my father wanted to scare me, he made one mistake. He underestimated how far I'd go to fight for my sister. Then, Just when I thought I was prepared, my mother made her next move. I had spent the past 48 hours bracing for the next attack. I was coordinating with Rachel, my lawyer, gathering everything I could to stop my father from relocating Selene. I had even started feeling something I hadn't in weeks: control. Then the call came. I was in Orion's apartment, my laptop open, scrolling through legal documents, when my phone rang. Rachel. I answered immediately. Hey, what's up? Her voice was tense. Zara, your mother just filed a legal document in your name. I sat up straight, the hairs on my arms rising. What? Rachel hesitated. It's bad. You need to come in, now. I practically ran into Rachel's office 20 minutes later. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Instead, she handed me a piece of paper, her lips pressed into a firm line. I took it, my eyes scanning over the words. And then, I froze. It was a legal affidavit, a sworn statement, signed by me. Only, I had never seen it before. I felt my stomach churn as I read the contents. In it, I supposedly declared that I was voluntarily giving up all financial and custodial claims to my family. That I wanted no involvement with Selene. That I had renounced my right to challenge anything related to my parents in court. I felt my hands start to tremble. This isn't real, I whispered. Rachel nodded grimly. We know that. But the judge doesn't. I looked at the bottom of the page. My signature. Or at least a version of it. A hemisephony. I slammed the paper down on Rachel's desk. She forged my signature. Rachel sighed. Yes. And unless we act fast, this document could be used as evidence against you in court. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just deception. This was a crime. And my own mother had done it. The drive back to Orion's apartment was a blur. I barely registered the city lights streaking past, the noise of traffic, the dull hum of the radio. All I could hear was her voice in my head. You walked away, Zara. Now we're making sure you stay gone. Marlo had never been like my father. She wasn't loud, violent, or explosive. She was worse. She let things happen. She allowed my father to do the damage while she stood by, pretending she had no power. But now she wasn't standing by. She was actively helping destroy me. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed. She picked up after 2 rings. I didn't wait for her to speak. You forged my signature, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Do you realize what you've done? A pause. Then coldly, you left us, Zara. You made your choice. I clenched my jaw. That's not an answer. You should have never come back into our lives, she continued, her tone smooth, detached. This is what's best for everyone. My grip on the phone tightened so hard my knuckles turned white. You're going to jail, Mom, I said, my voice deadly, because I'm pressing charges. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse and filed a criminal complaint for forgery. Rachel helped me file an emergency legal hold, preventing them from using the fraudulent document in court. By noon, a judge had signed off on it. Marlo's move had failed. For now. I stepped outside the courthouse and exhaled slowly, feeling the crisp Chicago air hit my face. Orion was waiting by the car, watching me closely. How bad is it? I let out a dry laugh. My own mother tried to erase me from my life, but now, I'm about to erase her freedom. But just as I prepared for the legal battle, I discovered the truth about who bailed out my father. I was sitting across from Rachel in her office, poring over the forged affidavit, preparing for the next step in our case against my mother. The tension in my shoulders hadn't eased in days, and I was running on little sleep and too much caffeine. Rachel was flipping through documents on her screen when she suddenly stopped, her brows knitting together. Zara, she said, her voice sharp. You're not going to believe this. I looked up, my pulse spiking. What? She turned the monitor toward me. I was reviewing the bail records for your father, expecting to see Marlo's name, or maybe even an old friend of his. But it's not her. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Then who? Rachel clicked a few keys, enlarging a section of the screen. A name stood out in bold print. Jonathan Calloway. I leaned forward, my mouth going dry. Who the hell is Jonathan Calloway? Rachel shook her head. That's what I'm about to find out. By the time I got back to Orion's apartment, my mind was racing. Jonathan Calloway. The name meant nothing to me, but something about it sent a shiver down my spine. Orion was sitting on the couch, flipping through his laptop. He glanced up as I walked in. You look like you've seen a ghost. I tossed my bag onto the table. I might as well have. Someone named Jonathan Calloway posted my father's bail. Orion's brows shot up. Who? Exactly. I sat down beside him, running a hand through my hair. Rachel's looking into him now, but I don't recognize the name. I've never met him, never heard of him. Why would some stranger bail out my father? Orion frowned, already typing. Let's see what we can find. It didn't take long. A few minutes later, Orion turned the laptop toward me, his expression dark. Zara. This guy is a major donor for a law firm specializing in aggressive family litigation. My blood turned to ice. I scanned the screen. Jonathan Calloway was a wealthy businessman in Chicago, with investments in real estate, private security firms, and high-profile legal cases. There was nothing tying him to my father, at least not on the surface, but if he was involved in family law disputes, then… I exhaled sharply. What if he's backing my father's lawsuit? Orion's jaw tightened. Then you're not just fighting your parents anymore. You're fighting someone with money, power, and influence. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. Darius wasn't just a bitter man clinging to control. He had help, and now I had to figure out why. The call came late that night. I was in the kitchen, reheating leftovers, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated. My gut told me not to answer, but something in me, the same reckless part that refused to back down, made me press accept. I lifted the phone to my ear. Hello? Silence. Then a deep, composed voice spoke. You're making a mistake, Ms. Bennett. My grip tightened around the phone. Who is this? The voice remained calm, deliberate. Some battles aren't worth fighting. A chill ran down my spine. I opened my mouth to respond, but the line went dead. I pulled the phone away, staring at the screen. No number, no trace. Orion walked in, rubbing his eyes. What's wrong? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Jonathan Calloway knows I'm onto him. Orion's face darkened. What did he say? I clenched my jaw, my pulse pounding. He told me to stop fighting. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Orion crossed his arms. So what are you gonna do? I lifted my chin, a slow burn of determination spreading through me. I wasn't just fighting my parents anymore. I was fighting someone powerful, and he had just made his first move. And then, as if things couldn't get worse, my apartment was broken into. I was alone at Orion's place. He had left for work an hour ago, and I was hunched over my laptop, digging through every trace of Jonathan Calloway I could find. My fingers ached from typing, my eyes burned from staring at the screen, but I couldn't stop. I needed to understand why this man was helping my father. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional sound of traffic outside. And then, a noise from the living room, a soft click, followed by a creak. I froze. The air shifted. Someone was in the apartment. I turned my head slowly toward the front door, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then the door swung open. The intruder stepped inside. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in all black, with a mask covering his face. Not a random thief. This wasn't a burglary. He moved with purpose. He was here for me. For half a second, I was frozen in place, my mind scrambling to process what was happening. Then instinct kicked in. I grabbed the heavy ceramic lamp from the side table and hurled it across the room. The lamp smashed against the wall, missing him by inches. He lunged. I barely dodged, twisting away and sprinting toward the bedroom. My heartbeat was a frantic drum against my ribs as I slammed the door shut and locked it. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone. 9:11. The pounding started immediately, a fist slamming against the door, and then a voice, low, distorted, unrecognizable. "Drop the case. This is your last warning." My breath hitched. He knew about the lawsuit. This wasn't random. This was a message. I backed away, gripping my phone tighter, my voice barely steady as I spoke into the receiver. "Someone's in my apartment. I'm locked in a room. Please, send help." The operator's voice was calm, asking for details, but I could barely focus. Footsteps. The intruder was moving. Would he try to break down the door? Would he? Then, silence. I didn't dare breathe. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then I heard it, the wail of approaching sirens. And just like that, he was gone. By the time the police arrived, the apartment door was wide open, the cold night air creeping in. Orion came rushing in a few minutes later, panic all over his face. "Zara!" He grabbed my arms, looking me over. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, still shaken. "No, but—" "He was here, Orion. He knew about the lawsuit. He told me to drop it. The police were searching the place, taking my statement, but the officer's tone was grim." "No fingerprints," he muttered, shaking his head. "Whoever this was, they knew what they were doing." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Orion's grip on my shoulder tightened. "This wasn't just a break-in," he said. His voice was low, firm, deadly serious. I nodded. "It was a warning." I took a slow breath, my pulse still erratic, but one thing was clear. If they thought I was backing down, they clearly didn't know me at all. Then I found the hidden device, and realized I had been watched for weeks. I hadn't slept. The break-in, the masked intruder, the whispered threat, it was all still too fresh. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to shut down. Every noise, every shift of the wind outside, made my muscles tense. Orion had barely left my side since the police left, and now, in the morning light, he paced my apartment, scanning every inch like he expected another attack. "If they got in once," he said, running a hand through his hair, "they can do it again." I nodded, gripping my coffee mug so tightly I thought it might crack. "We need to check for, I don't know, anything. A clue, something they left behind." Orion frowned but didn't argue. He grabbed his phone, switched on the flashlight, and started methodically searching. I stayed quiet, watching him move. The adrenaline from last night had faded into something worse. Unease, paranoia, dread. And then Orion stopped. He was crouched under my desk, his fingers running along the underside of the wooden surface. "Wait, what is this?" I sat up straight. "What?" He pulled something free and held it up. A tiny black square, barely the size of a fingernail. A recording device. My stomach dropped. I took it from Orion, staring at it like it might burn me. "Is this a tracker?" Orion shook his head, already reaching for his laptop. It's a microphone." My throat tightened. "A microphone?" Orion's fingers flew across the keyboard as he plugged it in. "Let's see what it's been picking up." A second later, a file appeared on his screen. He hit play, and my own voice filled the room. Weeks' worth of conversations. Me talking to Rachel about the lawsuit. Me telling Selene to be careful. Me planning every single move I had made. I felt sick. Someone had been listening. Someone knew everything. I grabbed the desk for support, my legs suddenly weak. "How long has this been here?" Orion scrolled through the timestamps. His jaw clenched. "Weeks!" I exhaled sharply. "It had to be from the break-in, right?" He hesitated. Then he shook his head. The timestamps go back before that." My chest tightened. "Which means, whoever planted this," Orion said grimly, "was inside long before last night?" My pulse pounded. This wasn't just my father. This wasn't just some petty family revenge. Someone else was pulling the strings. I refused to let them silence me. If they wanted to hide in the shadows, I would drag them into the light. I grabbed my phone and hit record. The camera blinked to life, my own face staring back at me. I took a breath. For weeks, someone has been spying on me. They broke into my apartment. They planted a device to listen to my conversations. They've threatened me, tried to scare me into silence. But I want you all to know, I'm not going anywhere. I hit post. Within minutes, the video started spreading. People shared it, commented, demanded answers. The message was clear. I was being watched, and now the world was watching back. And then, as I sat there watching the views climb, my phone buzzed. A new text from an unknown number. You shouldn't have done that. A chill ran down my spine. For the first time, I was afraid. Not just for me, but for what they might do next. And then, I found the evidence that could destroy them. The fallout from my video was immediate. News outlets started picking it up. My inbox flooded with messages. Some of them were support, others were warnings. But the one that mattered most came late that night. A text from Selene. I found something. In Dad's office. My stomach tightened as I read her next message. You need to see this. I called her immediately, heart pounding. What did you find? She hesitated, her voice hushed. I don't know exactly, but it's bad. Emails, bank stuff, things with Calloway's name all over them. My breath hitched. Selene, I said carefully, can you get it to me? Silence. Then a whisper. I'll figure it out. The next night, Selene snuck out. I met her at a late-night diner on the outskirts of town, the kind with flickering neon lights and the smell of burnt coffee in the air. She slid into the booth across from me, her hoodie pulled up, her hands gripping a thick, worn file folder. She looked around nervously. If he finds out I took this— He won't, I said firmly. You're safe with me. Her hands trembled as she pushed the folder toward me. I flipped it open, and the world shifted beneath me. Bank statements, large, unexplained deposits, money moving between accounts I didn't recognize. Emails, messages between Darius and Jonathan Calloway, discussions about controlling my finances, about making sure I stayed out of the way. And then, at the bottom of the stack, a contract, a signed agreement between my father and Calloway. I scanned the words, my breath coming fast. Calloway had paid my father, not just to keep me out of the lawsuit, but to ensure my silence permanently. A lump formed in my throat. This wasn't just about custody. This wasn't just about revenge. They had planned to erase me from my own life. I looked up at Selene. She was watching me, her face pale. Zara, she whispered, what are you going to do? I set the papers down, my hands steady despite the rage burning through me. I'm going to end this. The moment I stepped out of the diner, I called Rachel. She picked up on the first ring. I have what we need to win, I said, my voice deadly calm. Rachel's tone sharpened. What did you find? Proof, I said. Fraud, financial crimes, conspiracy, enough to take down both of them. A pause. Then, her voice turned steel. Then let's end this. The next morning, I walked into Rachel's office and handed over the evidence that would bury them. Within hours, everything was in motion. Court orders, subpoenas, investigations into Darius and Calloway's financial dealings. By midday, the legal system had its claws in them. Calloway's name was in the headlines. Darius's bank accounts were frozen. Their empire was starting to crumble. The power had shifted. I should have felt relief, but I knew one thing for certain. They wouldn't go down without a fight. And I had just declared war. And just like that, everything changed. The courtroom was packed. I sat beside Rachel, gripping the stack of documents that had the power to end this nightmare. My breath was steady, my pulse slow, but inside, I could feel the storm. Across the room, Darius sat at the defendant's table, his face carefully blank. But I saw the tightness in his jaw, the way his fingers curled into fists on the table. Beside him, his lawyers were whispering among themselves, stealing glances at me and Rachel. They knew they were losing. The judge entered, a gavel struck, and the room settled into tense silence. It was time. Rachel stood first. Your Honor, this case is no longer just about a custody dispute. It is about fraud, financial crimes, and an orchestrated campaign to erase my client's rights and existence. Her voice rang through the courtroom, unwavering, clear. One by one, she laid out the evidence: the forged affidavit, the fraudulent bank accounts, the financial trail leading back to Jonathan Calloway. Gasps rippled through the room when Rachel placed the contract, the one that proved Darius had been paid to ensure my silence, onto the table before the judge. I turned to look at my father then. His face was pale, but he clenched his jaw, refusing to show weakness. But I knew. I had him. And then, the moment everything truly collapsed, Rachel lifted the final piece of evidence. Your Honor, this document proves that Jonathan Calloway financed my client's father's legal battle, not to protect family, but to protect his own financial interests. The judge's eyes narrowed. The room shifted. The case was no longer just about me. This was bigger. A criminal investigation into both of them was now inevitable. Across the room, Darius leaned toward his lawyers, hissing something under his breath. And then, his legal team suddenly withdrew. A ripple of shock swept through the courtroom. Rachel smirked, leaning toward me. They just realized they can't win. The judge turned back to us, her voice firm. The custody claim is dismissed. The fraudulent financial activities will be referred for criminal prosecution. The court finds sufficient evidence to pursue further investigation into the defendant's involvement with fraudulent business dealings. And just like that, it was over. I exhaled. The weight that had crushed me for years finally lifted. I turned to Selene, sitting in the row behind me. She was staring at me, wide-eyed. You're free, I whispered, and for the first time in her life, I think she believed it. Outside, the air was crisp, the autumn wind carrying the weight of the past away. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, voices shouting. Zara, what happens next? Do you have a statement? I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Orion clapped a hand on my shoulder, his grin wide. You did it! I let out a breath, shaking my head. We did it! Selene slipped her hand into mine. We walked down the courthouse steps together. As we reached the sidewalk, I glanced back one last time, just long enough to see the officers leading Darius away in handcuffs. Calloway's fate was still uncertain. His empire was crumbling, but men like him never went down easy. I knew I might have to fight again. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I turned forward, the city stretching before me. My future was finally mine. And I walked away, without looking back. For years, I let them define me. I let them take from me my time, my money, my dignity. But the moment I took back control, everything changed. I fought for my truth. I fought for my freedom. And I won. Because no one, not family, not power, not money, gets to decide my worth but me. If my story proves anything, it's this. You are stronger than the ones who try to break you. So stand up, speak out, and never let them silence you. If this message resonates with you, make sure to subscribe, because your story, your voice, matters.